And the first one I want to talk about is the concept of current level of service. So this is one that you might be familiar with. It's on the left-hand side of the screen here. It shows I'm on a case profile. So anyway, on the left side, we see current level of service. So the idea behind this feature was to make it function similar to how the closing code on a case works. So oftentimes at the end of a case, or almost every time at the end of the case, we give a case, what we did on the case. We gave advice, we gave some brief service, we did extended service or whatever, and then we report on that. We added this feature at the request of one of our clients because they came to us and said, the problem with that model is that we have no idea during the case what level of service we're offering. And so we have no way of really knowing how to manage or budget time for given attorneys, because all we see is that you have 10 cases on your case list, or you have 100 cases on your case list. Well, if there were 10 cases that were full rep, that's much different than if there were 10 advice cases. Vice versa, if there were 100 advice cases, you might choose to give the person with 10 full rep cases the case or not, or whatever based on that. So we added this feature. We also made it so you can log it. So if on this screen, you'll see here that we have the different levels of service and when they were changed. So if it started out as an advice case and then it escalated and was upgraded to a brief service case later, you would see the fact that it was started out as advice, went to brief service, and at some point went to extended service. So this is where you would control all of that. It's pretty straightforward. I don't think there's a lot that I need to cover on this, but it basically shows you that you can put in your notes as to what happened or why you're doing it. You can also email people if you wanted to send an email to the person saying that you're upgrading the case from advice case to brief service case. So that's an important feature that not everyone knows about, but I think it's a big piece of what we're doing going forward. It centers around this concept of level of service. Your levels of service would mimic your closing reasons. So, and again, I think the use case is just when you take a case, you can have it on your disposition screen set to automatically require that you set the level of service. So you always have a level of service in every case, and then use that to kind of manage the caseloads of any given attorney. So this piece, level of service, is a really big piece for us, just kind of giving you a preview of where we're going with all of this, is that whenever we get into any type of predictive analytics where we can start to give you metrics on things based on the level of service and the type of case and maybe the issues in the case, which we'll talk about in a minute, those factors will go a long way in determining how many hours a case typically takes, right? So if you had just foreclosure cases and you were giving advice on foreclosure cases, you would expect your hours requirement to give advice on a foreclosure case to be a lot less than if you took a full rep foreclosure case, right? And if you had certain issues in a case, like say you had an asylum case, if you had a legal issue in the case that was the client had been here more than a year before they applied for asylum, which makes the case much more complicated, you would expect the number of hours and the likelihood of success in that case to vary based on the fact that that issue is involved in the case. So level of service is one of those key pieces of information that informs us a lot about what this case is and how what we can expect our commitment to the case to be and what possibly an outcome in the case may be.